In the book, The Creator Revealed, and in this video series about the book, I've discussed 3 scientific observations that give evidence for the God of the Bible. The first is that the universe had a beginning, so it seems to have a transcendent creator. The second is that the universe appears finely tuned and designed to allow life to exist. And the third was that the planet Earth seems to be a rare planet with unique characteristics that allow humans to exist on it, as if humans have a purpose. Welcome to the 19th video in the series about the book The Creator Revealed. And in this video I look at the first of 2 addendum chapters, supplemental material of the book, this one called Atheism of the Gaps. Since the ideas that I've discussed have been developed, the scientific discoveries and observations that give evidence for God, over the last 10 or so years, scientists, particularly those who are atheists, have tried to develop ideas that refute these scientific observations that give evidence for God. For instance, scientists have begun to try to develop ideas that would give an indication that the universe doesn't really have a beginning, because if it had a beginning, then it possibly had a beginner. Or maybe that the beginning was some kind of natural event and we don't need a supernatural creator. These ideas have been developed by scientists like Larry Krauss and Stephen Hawking. And I discuss these ideas in this addendum and show why they don't really solve any of the problems, why the universe still has a beginning, must have a beginning. In fact, one of the major theoretical ideas developed by Borde, Guth, and Vilenkin show that any universe expanding on average has to have a beginning. As far as the fine-tuning of the universe, 2 arguments have been developed that try to refute this idea that the universe seems to be fine-tuned. One is that maybe it really just isn't fine-tuned, but the other is that maybe we live in a multiverse with many, many universes, most of which are inhospitable to life, but that this one happens to be a special one that is hospitable to life, and we're just lucky to live in it. So I discussed the multiverse and what the ramifications are, and does it really remove the need for God in the fine-tuning of the universe? Finally, we've discovered lots of planets, so sometimes scientists say, well, of course one should be suitable for life if there's a bunch out there. But in fact, if you do the math and look at the requirements to find a planet like Earth that can support higher life forms, you find that it's very unlikely to find any planet like the Earth. So in this chapter, I discuss some of these ideas that have been developed to refute the scientific evidence for God and how they really don't do what they're purported to do. They really don't give adequate refutation of the idea that the universe seems to be created by a transcendent creator, fine-tuned for life, and that the Earth seems to be a unique planet. But one of the common themes of all of these ideas that try to refute the evidence for God is they're all speculative. None of them have any scientific observations or any scientific backing. So what has happened is that all the scientific observations, all the theoretical calculations give evidence for God. So those who don't believe in God have to look in the areas we don't understand to try to refute the things we do understand that point to God. Christians are sometimes accused of pointing to what's called a God of the gaps argument. We look at things we don't understand, things that science can't explain, and we say, God must have done it. We look for God in these gaps. For instance, the ancient people might not have known how lightning was created, so they say, well, God did it. But then when we find out that lightning is caused by electrical discharge, there's no room for God. But in fact, recently just the opposite has happened. All the things we know and do understand point to a God. So if you don't believe in God, you have to look to the things we don't understand and say, well, maybe there's no God there. The atheists are filling in gaps in our knowledge with atheism, because the things that we actually do understand point to the God of the Bible. So rather than the theist having to point to gaps to try to invoke God, the atheist has to invoke gaps to try to point to atheism. The tables have been turned. All the scientific evidence points to God. So if you don't believe in God, you have to point to the things we don't know and just hope that somehow those things can be filled with atheism. But in fact, they won't be. All the evidence we have, the abundant evidence that continues to come in and grows and gets stronger, says that this universe was created by a transcendent God and finely tuned for humans to exist because humans seem to have a purpose.